Hello, everyone, and welcome to Little Legends Podcast number 40. You may notice I did not hold out the hello very long. It is for a reason, because we are on a tight schedule here, because we have an amazing guest today. We have none other than the director of esports for Riot Games, Riot Magus. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you on. And of course, it's me, Blevins, and we got Boop here too. Don't worry, Boop. I didn't forget you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I wanted to make sure you got in there, but we'll get through all the housekeeping stuff. That'll be after, or maybe I'll put it in post. You know I won't, but maybe I will. But we want to start off this amazing interview we've got here, like we always do, and talk a little bit about your origin, Magus. You know, what's your origin in gaming? Where did your name come from? All that good stuff.
Sure, I'll just take it away. So Magus comes from Chrono Trigger. I was a big fan of RPGs kind of growing up. That was my first sort of genre introduction to gaming. Like my aunt visited from Taiwan and bought me and my brother a Super Nintendo and Final Fantasy IV, or Final Fantasy II for you Americans that are uncultured. But
I am uncultured swine, that's for sure.
yeah. And so JRPGs in particular were first love. And I always thought Magus was just like a super cool character, villain turned good guy. That was like pretty new for its time. And I generally always play like mages or wizards, whether it's in like D&D or League or anything. That's my jam. And so I was just pleasantly surprised that I got it in League, because I like signed up for my account in beta, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got Magus. And then when I joined Riot, they're like, "Oh, you can put Riot in front of your name." I'm like, "I just want people to know that I got Magus. I'm cool."
Yeah, I've got a more exclusive name already. Okay, you don't need.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like Chris being available or something like that. Well, that's really cool. So you had a love of JRPGs. Is that what your like first kind of gaming memories are all about? And then would you say that's kind of like what influenced you the most in the gaming space to eventually want to work in the gaming space as well?
Yeah, I think that like my first memories, again, I was like dreaming about when I got stuck in Final Fantasy. I'd like dream about like possible solutions to the problems, and I was like second grade, and so that was, to me, it was normal. And I'd say that like the ones that like influenced me the most ended up being like the online like MMO style games. Like my first love were these like online text-based MUDs in AOL. I don't know, like man, this is dating me, but like this used to be the way to play online games. You like dial into AOL, and they had these like you're like typing. That's how I became like really good at typing. So like games like Dragon Realms, Gemstone, those like eventually got me into like EverQuest and WoW, and that kind of like was the arc for me that actually ended up getting me into gaming. I actually ended up working at a place called Curse as my first gaming job, because I was like a raid leader of a guild in WoW, and a guy who some of you may know, Jack Edian, who from Cloud9, he was at Curse as a sales guy. He was in my guild. He was like our off tank, and I was the raid leader. So he was like, hey, like he I was looking to get out of finance and consulting and stuff, and so he was like, hey, come work Curse. And so that would be the arc, right? It all started from online text-based mods. That's where it all started.
Is this guild like the hey, we're gonna be giants in esports someday guild? Was that what it was? Was it the called shot?
We didn't. It was definitely not a called shot, but it was fortuitous, and there are a lot of people in there who ended up being in the space somehow. Like I was working with like a company that like works on production and some animation. He was like one of our resto druids, and so it was just like randomly like, hey, I remember you way back when. You're that raid leader that used to yell at us, and I was like, oh great, yeah.
Oh man, I just think that that's such a great way to build real life skills that are obviously transferable. So like, I guess what we learned from here is that if you play WoW, you might be able to become the director of esports at Riot Games one day if you yell at the right people. You
gotta yell at
the lesson that
you have to make sure you target your yelling at the correct people and being able to understand.
Exactly.
That's great. Go ahead, Blev.
Oh, yeah. So you talk about JRPGs, MMOs, that as being sort of an influence in regards to the gaming sphere, sphere, not spear. Although the gaming sphere also kind of works in that sense as well. But in terms of like influences and in regards to people, is there anyone that jumps out as a big influence in the gaming realm for you?
I think day 9 early on, like I was, I think sort of one of my first forays into like esports actually was StarCraft, right? StarCraft 2,
Yep.
And listening to like watching the Day 9 Daily,
Yes.
and hearing some of his like inspirational stories and just like his perspective on things, and that just got me more into this concept of competitive gaming. Before that I was of course like an RPG, MMO, like PvE, blue server, kind of didn't venture in the realm of like player versus player,
Yeah.
but like Day 9 through StarCraft really got me into this concept of like esports as well as at Curse, and that eventually led me, of course, to Riot, and super fortunate to be able to. At that point, I think when I joined Riot, I had something like 2,500 games of League played, so that was like a dream job just to even get to be a part of Riot.
Yeah. That is definitely awesome.
Well, let's talk about your, we're getting to the present. We'll get to the nitty gritty TFT stuff here in one or two questions. But what I always like to know is people who have been able to grow and climb up the ladder at companies like Riot Games is to kind of reflect on what your first couple days were like there. And when you sat down thinking about where you might end up going. So tell me about your first day at Riot and kind of the feeling that you had, and then kind of compare that to your current days of Riot based off of, your new job title previously versus the first day. I think that's always really interesting to talk about the evolution someone goes through during their years at a company.
I mean, I definitely remember my first day at Riot. It was like I was so excited. Again, like I started playing League in beta, and I had 2,000 plus games of League played. I'd watched like every single tournament, and so I was just so excited to come in and work on a thing that's near and dear to my heart. I mean, like my two loves are sports and video games, and so this is like it was perfect. It was a dream job, right? And so I remember just being super nervous, like just a ton of imposter syndrome. Like, hey, should I be here? Like, am I good enough? Because I'd put like Riot on this pedestal, and it was an awesome place. It was pretty small, but it's just pressure to like learn quickly, understand what like you're trying to do, like meet a ton of people. I think it's even harder now with Riot being so large. But also back then we had about like 1 day of what we call D-noob, where people like come into the company and learn about becoming a writer. It's like a 1 day program. And I remember that was like a big deal. It was like a 1 day D-noob. And now there's like a week dedicated to it. You get to like, you have tons of speakers and whatnot. And so I think that's an area that Riot's leveled up quite a bit in, just because it's so much more complicated for people nowadays. We're north of 2,000 folks, 2,000 riders, and so it's just like a much more complex company to be in. But I was super nervous. Just like I remember like there are a lot of people who've been in games their whole lives, and I'd sort of been on the periphery. But like I'm an economics major. Like I did banking and consulting and finance, and it sort of really felt like I had to earn my place there. And I think we did that first year, like throwing worlds for the first time at the Galen Center. And when I think that was really when I was like, okay, cool. Like, okay, I belong here. Like we're going to be all right. It took a while though.
Yeah. That's, just, it's crazy to think back to those early times for sure. But I'm sure many of the folks that are listening to a TFT podcast are
talking about League.
Boop trying to talk about World of Warcraft and League. Get this old junk out of here, okay?
About the origin story, it informs the rest of your decisions.
No,
right?
I am on the periphery. No. I'm a millennial pushing Zoomer. Okay, even though I'm gonna be an official boomer. I'm gonna be an official boomer in a month and 1 day. Official esports boomer, that is. I want brand new DLC content. I want microtransactions. I want the new thing. I want it yesterday. Okay, I don't want any of this legacy stuff. I want new stuff, and I want new information. Boop. Okay, none of these.
All right, let's do it.
None of these PS2 games that you're talking about. We want to talk about TFT, of course, and the competitive scene for TFT. Obviously, at the onset of Galaxies. You were at the Galaxies Invitational and gave a little tidbit of some information moving forward. And we also obviously now know more about the Liquid event, of course, brought to you by Jersey Mike Subs, and the Cloud9 event as well. But right now, the competitive scene is a mix of, we're just starting to get that more official Riot stuff, and we've obviously seen like Giant Slayer events and other third-party events, Cruise Invitational, things that are going on in the scene. Where do you, from where you're sitting, Whalen, where do you see competitive TFT moving forward?
Sure. I think that this is our first foray of just like, let's just establish a foundation of what does competitive TFT look like? Like the Galaxies for us is okay. Like in the past, we've had some tournaments, but like, what if we can at least put an anchor, have some sort of championship, and then allow for a community to kind of build around it, give more meaning to some of the community events that are out there, and try to like work in partnership to activate the community to do that. And so I think that Galaxies is like, okay, great. Can we just go through and crown a champion? Like, can we go through the process of having like giving masters, grandmasters, plus like challenger players the chance to play with higher stakes? Can it all ladder up to something, and we can crown a champion? And our hope long term is to really expand, kind of like poker, just like broaden the event, make the main event bigger, allow more people to take their shot. We think that that's something that I think is sort of, at least that's my dream. I think, Mark's been on and he's talked about poker as well. Like that, a lot of that's an inspiration for us in terms of the direction. So we hope that with better tools, with more tournament organizers getting experience in the scene, throwing TFT events, we can actually have more than, we can have tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of people playing in a tournament over the course of multiple weekends. Maybe you can like buy back in, like we want to explore that. And sort of bring competitive TFT to the masses. But like for Galaxies, it's like, let's do the core of what esports is all about. Like, let's make sure we find one of the best or the best TFT player for Galaxies. And that's going to be our goal. And we'll build on each of the sets successfully.
Yeah, so you're setting the foundation of the pyramid, right? I use this analogy all the time because I think a lot of people try to start building their pyramid at the top at the results, but if you start at the point, it'll just fall over, right? So it seems like you're just building that foundation out to let the world kind of expand on its own. But something that you did bring up that I find really interesting is the poker analogy, because a lot of people have brought it up as to poker might be a really good way to kind of a good model to model some TFT esports off of. Are you talking more in the sense of the number of people that participate in the main event, or like there's different bracelets that you can get, there's like 7-card stud, Texas Hold'em, or is it all of that? Are you kind of thinking about it in that way, or is it just a participation type of model that you're thinking about?
Or is it that Norman Chad should be a caster for TFT?
I wouldn't mind giving Norm his shot. But I think that if you look at it the base level, right? Like the comparison, the reason we draw those comparisons are that you have 8 in a TFT match, you have 8 individual threads, like 8 stories happening at the same time. There is some degree of like shared pool of units, and sort of each game takes on a life of its own, similar to a poker table. And we think that, like poker, right? It's a skill-based game, but there's randomness involved. And so, like in that sense, at its core, could we draw from some of these parallels to either create a broadcast experience around it that sort of mirrors poker? And there's many ways you can do that, right? We either live or live to tape and post edited. There's many approaches to that, but also from a participation standpoint, well, I think one of the cool parts about poker is it's this widely accessible game, right? Like, you know what, I can buy into the main event. I'm not going to win. I'm not even get close to winning, but I might hit a hot streak and like advance past the table or advance the day 2. And I think that that's one of the things that it would be cool to sort of, in that sense, bring that sort of democratization and the ability to just take your shot to a lot of the TFT players, even the ones who aren't challenger or master. I think that's one of the cool things about TFT. So in that sense, and look, if there's variance, maybe we could do bracelets in different style games, but I think it's mostly about coverage type and structure.
Yeah, because my initial thought was you can make it like something like galaxies. Each galaxy can have its own event or something. But of course, that's me starting at the top of the pyramid. But and it's so funny that you're talking about the everyman, right? Because what is competitive TFT? Is it for the top level players? Is it for the streamers? It's really for everybody. And one of the best poker stories there was Chris Moneymaker coming out of nowhere, winning the
Yep.
biggest pot in the history at that point in time. And it's even like racehorses like Secretariat coming out of nowhere as well. So that kind of model does really well in this field. So something, speaking of models though, that I'm really interested in is kind of that debate of the casual esporting experience, kind of like some old Twitch Rivals events were, versus something like Giant Slayer, which is pretty hyper competitive without any of that, the extra bounties and the shenanigans going on in between some of the personalities. Are you guys just kind of practicing or trying a bunch of things out and seeing what sticks? Is the community going to kind of decide what they like to hear? What are your personal thoughts on something like this? Because this is definitely a debate that's been rampant in the TFT community, and I think there's good points on both sides.
Certainly, I think that if you look at the first couple of sets, I mean, we went with the streamer influencer route more because we wanted to. That was just finding a vehicle through which we can test the broadcast. Like, what does a TFT broadcast even look like? And so we wanted a way to get visibility onto that and to bring meaning. And by the way, like a lot of people tuned in, and therefore, like, I think that's partially because of the fact that they know who's competing.
Yeah.
I actually think that'll be a big challenge for like truly competitive TFT, is if you don't know who's actually competing, right? We know who Chris Moneymaker is now, but when Chris Moneymaker was competing, he was his dude named Chris, right? Super cool name, but like just a dude named Chris. And so I think that'll be one of the challenges we actually have to overcome as we shift from okay, let's try this with the streamers that you know and love, to in a merit-based system, which is what the Galaxy system really is intended to be. How can we ensure that it's still something a fan wants to tune in and watch? Because otherwise the system is literally serving just a tiny sliver of the people who play. We ideally also want TFT to be a competitive format and experience for fans to tune in and watch because they find it interesting. And so that'll be on us to do a lot of storytelling. Ideally, that's on community to create events that allow for names to sort of bubble up to the top, so you kind of see those people coming. But I think our intention really is to try to have this be merit based and accepting the risk, try to offset it with really good broadcast coverage, good storytelling, like shoulder programming, and ideally building systems of tournaments so that you see these folks coming and they can actually begin to build some notoriety even before they get to a championship.
Yeah, that is definitely, it's a very fine line to walk because, like, I mean, a good example is someone that's in our community, Sphinx. He just top forward the Giant Slayer event, and an amazing player. He's at the top of the ladder all the time. He's in a lot of those games, but he's just starting out streaming, so he's not a Skara. Way more people know who Skara is than Sphinx, but if I had to pick one to win the tournament, I know who I'm picking. And it's not Skara, sorry. But
I don't think Skara would pick Skara. So.
Yeah. Humility is a great great thing to have.
He's smart enough to not do that. But so to take it a little bit of a step back, TFT obviously is an auto battler, and if you asked any of us what an auto battler was even 2 years ago, we'd say,
Yeah.
I don't know, because that doesn't exist. So what has it been like building out, not just the game itself, but the esports and the community around essentially a brand new game format?
It's been challenging, invigorating, humbling, all of these things, right? I mean, we as I kind of mentioned, like when we're building League, we had the chance to see what MOBA coverage is like, what community was doing before even coming to Riot and starting our own thing. And this is sort of like everyone's solving a puzzle collectively. And it's been cool to see, and we know that we don't have the tools necessary to do the job, right? And so everyone has to be creative. I think if you look at the Liquid Galaxy event, which by the way, super cool name, But like they use like I believe they use like Discord bots in some ways to like try to auto like run a tournament, because running things at scale is hard. But overall, it's one of these things where you want to kind of throw out what you know, and you try to look at what are some of the adjacent like experiences. So with TFT, we're like, well, it kind of feels a little bit like poker, kind of feels a little bit like, you know, Magic or Hearthstone or like a card game. Kind of feels in some ways like a BR, because you're sort of whittling people down, and there's like, you know, they're separate threads trying to go. So then, okay, knowing these sort of like things, what could be a mix of them? Where do we explore? And you have to be okay trying and failing with certain things. Like I believe when we like interwove TFT into the All-Star game or the All-Star event with League of Legends, that was met with very mixed feedback, right? And so we learned a lot there. We have to be like, okay, cool, that didn't work, let's try something else. So I think from a product like management mad scientist perspective, we love it. But also like it's sometimes frustrating, because I think a lot of people expect us to sort of know exactly what to do. We move quick, get it right, nail it, and it's like, oh man, we want to do that too, but you know, it's like it takes time to set it all up and to try things. And so the Galaxy is our first attempt at it. It's very likely that the next set will look somewhat different, and then we're gonna like iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate. And so you know, keep the feedback coming, and we promise to not get it right every time, but we're gonna try our best, and we promise to, when we not get it right, we'll learn from it, and we'll iterate quickly. So yeah, it's an exercise in humility, I guess, is the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
I should have used I promise to be right some of the time in my wedding vows. That's perfect.
Yeah, but you're supposed to keep your promises, but okay.
So one thing I think is we do talk about some frustrations that I think the community has been waiting for a while, and I think the number one, this question was going to happen no matter what. What's going on with Spectator Mode and data tools to go along with helping people run and potentially scale events up in the future? We were told that it's going to be coming after Galaxies. It's been a little bit now, but do you have any more information on whether that Spectator tool is coming soon, TM, or is it something that we're going to wait for just to make sure it's right?
Yeah, I think that. So for those of you who are wanting a date, I'm sorry, I don't have that. There's no breaking
news. All right, cancel the interview. It was useless. I wasn't even recording.
I
haven't even been recording. I just wanted to get the answer to that.
Yeah, I think the key is just knowing that, like, look, the toolkit for tournament organizers is not where we want it to be, or not where it should be. You know, custom lobbies, Spectator Mode, APIs to like get people in and out of games and report results. Like these are things that we know are needed to especially achieve the goals we want to achieve with Galaxies, or not Galaxy TFT in general. We want to like have it be more accessible, have it be easier to run larger events. What's been cool though is that, like, one of my main points of contact is Dax, and he's the product person on TFT, and he's leading that team, and he and I've been working just really closely, and he knows that how important it is. He lets me know that it's on the roadmap. You know, we have a rough idea of like, hey, when can it be delivered? I don't want to speak for Dax because I think he'd kill me. But the fact of the matter is, like, I think it's important to know that, like, we know the team who's developing this, who's signing up for the work, understands that this is important, and there is a commitment to try to build towards that and to get it done. When is always a challenge, right? Because I think that you guys speculated that, like, getting mobile out was a huge priority for us. I think it's been a really good thing for the game. I myself play on an iPad when I attempt to exercise here in home quarantine, and like I'm biking on my like bike and trying to like like re-roll quickly. But we know ultimately that the ecosystem will be capped. And there's only so much creativity without some of those baseline tools. And so we are trying to prioritize them as best as possible. And I'm an evangelist. I just, if Dax gets me on Slack, he knows that I'm going to be like, oh, by the way, how's tool development coming, buddy? You know, and so he's sick of me.
It's like your report card. When's your report card coming in, buddy?
Okay, so we are unfortunately right at the end of time, but it wouldn't be a Little Legends podcast interview without asking the most important question. Magus, what is the best tasting Little Legend?
Well, as you can see from this board here, actually, for those of you listening at home, you can't see, but I have a whiteboard here. I've been trying to think, like, do you go with the type of little legend? You go like, oh, like, do you do the fua because it's pork? For those of you that you go squid because like that's an underrated type of thing.
Very true.
Look, I'm gonna have to go with a fastball. I'm a pretty simple guy. I think the extra spicy feather night, which is basically just KFC with some like seasoning on it, would be number one. And I'd say like a close second would be firecracker fua with the with like the extra delicious spicy pork. Would be my thing. But there's so many good options. I think that was actually my conclusion is that it's hard to be wrong within the sphere of like you've got fruits, sugars. You've got like spice. They've done a good job of giving stuff. I want like a mort alternative, like a mort dog, little legend alt like spicy thing.
Or something.
Yeah. Like look, in some cultures is acceptable. So
in all cultures it's acceptable to love mort. But the funniest thing for listeners at home is on the board it says seasoning ? And that is cracking me up for some reason.
I mean, for seasoning, it's all about for food, it's all about the seasoning, right?
True.
And so that's kind of where I landed.
That's true.
It's my dream T-shirt to have a Last Supper drawing with Mort in the middle and like various TFT people around him and all the characters, but all the food is little.
Yes. Make that merch. I'll be one of your first customers.
All right, sounds good. That's motivation I needed.
We might just have to get that done. But that is unfortunately the end of our time here. But fortunately, we had a really great conversation here. Magus, thank you so much for coming on the show. The floor is yours. Sell out, shout out, whatever you'd like. You've got the floor.
I just want to say thank you guys for having me on here, and to everyone who's listening. It's just it's cool to be part of this community, and I just want to also thank everyone who's just like wants to play TFT, watch TFT. I myself am an avid player. I enjoy it. I hope that people hit me up on Twitter for feedback. I think that it's not going to be, again, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be smooth, but we are sort of solving this TFT puzzle together. And so the more feedback that you all can give us, we're always listening, and we promise to try to understand and react and do the best we can and try harder the second time. So just want to say thanks, and couldn't be more excited about where TFT is going. It's something that's like really, it's just a great time to be at Riot, having so many games, and TFT is just like, it's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, well, I can't put it any better than that. Again, thank you so much, Magus, for coming on the show. For those listening in Twitch chat, we'll be right back just in a little bit.
Thanks, guys.
There's no shortage of action going on at our exclusive partner, BetOnline. NASCAR is back, and BetOnline has hundreds of other games, events, esports, and sports to get in on. You can still bet on simulated NFL, NBA, and UFC events 24/7. Or you can participate in a $10,000 Madden Bracket Challenge, a March Madness-style NFL simulation tournament, or you can enter for free. And coming up next Sunday, BetOnline has ex-Chicago Bulls Horace Grant, Bill Carter, and Craig Hodges joining them to discuss the Michael Jordan documentary on what they're calling After the Dance. Visit betonline.ag and use the promo code BlueWire to receive your new welcome bonus and check out all the action. BetOnline, your online wagering solution. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed the break. Man, Boop, that was just an awesome interview. Whalen is a really cool guy, and I wish we had more time, but I think when the time comes, he'll come back on. When there's some new exciting stuff to talk about, we'll get him on, maybe for a full hour, maybe just another half hour.
He okay, no leaks. These are our private conversations, but he did say he'd like to come back on again. So we'll figure it out.
I was trying to just allude to that, but
no leaks.
No leaks, but here's a leak. It's like, not to be an asshole, but immediately. So
I'm such a professional with that.
Hey, it's our show. We can do whatever we want.
Toys R Show. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
see.
yeah, see, yeah. Do I have the? Oh yeah. Yeah, see, yeah. We're here in the Radio Theater Lab. Okay, I'm not doing that. He brought up horse racing. I was gonna go into a whole thing about that, but I had to hold back my bits.
Yeah, so why don't we take some time to kind of like
Actually
hold
talk
back my
about
bits.
TFT.
No, and talk about what he said. Because there's actually something that he brought up that I really, really want to talk on because I see this as an issue in a variety of gaming spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Is the fact that people don't think the devs know, right? That
Yeah.
we want a spectator mode, or
Mm-hmm.
they don't know that certain metas suck,
Right.
or that they don't know because you just heard Whalen say it, right? He is an avid player, right? And
Yeah.
he's constantly poking about the spectator mode, but releasing a rushed spectator mode is not, in my opinion, as good as releasing a finished product, right?
Right.
And in the world of gaming, finished product, unfortunately, is a loose term.
Yeah.
But I think for
Sure.
Riot, like we
Hashtag
really
beta.
right? They don't want to release something that is going to fall apart and require even more
Right.
work.
And gonna have bad press, bad PR. People are gonna complain
Yeah,
about it. People are gonna
exactly.
bitch
And
and
then
moan about it. Yeah.
people won't have tournaments. But I think the thing that I really wanted to react to mostly about everything is the fact that, I hear a lot of people being like, oh, the devs are dumb. They don't know what they're doing. And while I think sometimes it can be frustrating with what you want not being there, um, we have to acknowledge the fact that Riot Games is Riot Games.
Mm-hmm.
They literally had one game for what, 9 years, right?
Yeah.
And they created an entire empire off of one game on esports. They know what they're doing, right? It might
Right.
feel slow, it might feel like they're not listening sometimes, but I think it's good for us to assume that they are hearing us and that they do know that we're
Yeah.
waiting for spectator mode.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's becoming a little bit frustrating recently.
Yeah.
It's not just TFT. Like I've heard it
Oh, it's
at
all over
least
the
in
place.
three or four different games at this point.
So I I see both. I understand at least the mentality of both sides. So I think a lot of people have either lingering feelings or a sour taste or whatever from League in the past. At least that's just what I'm getting from coming into this TFT / League community essentially as a newcomer, not even really having had played League since a lot of the people that play League now are even born or I mean, they definitely were born, but like they didn't play when I played, right? I played way back. And so I came into the community relatively new, and I come in and I'm basing all of my thoughts on Riot, on TFT, on all of their stuff based on what I've experienced, which has essentially been TFT at the time, TFT exclusively with Mort Dog at the helm, and Mort being super open and super like communicative and open to feedback and actually streaming all this stuff. So I'm like, oh, when people are like, oh, well, they're not saying anything about spectate mode, it's like, well, actually, if you go into Mort's stream, he said it multiple times that they're working on it and like the mobile thing, and like every time I say that, people are like, oh, well, but I mean, they haven't released a statement. It's like, yeah, but like, what do you want them to say? It's not ready.
Like,
Do you think that they have it and it's not like
they're just keeping it secret?
they're just keeping it secret, or they honestly think that it's not like? I guess I could see like them
There
lying about
is
it if it like wasn't
there
actually a
is a
priority.
sense of acknowledgement that I think people just naturally seek for,
Right.
or like seek after. Just like I have concerns. Oh, okay, you heard it. Because the opposite end of the equation is true. Like, say you're like learning a skill and you realize that you're pretty good at something, but
Mm-hmm.
someone who you consider better is like, you are good at this. All of a sudden, you're like way more confident because you feel
Right.
like your skill has been acknowledged, that what you're doing is right, that what you're thinking
Right.
is the right way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's where a lot of frustration comes from, is that we've heard, oh, we're working on it, right? But maybe what people want is, what are you working on? Like, what are
Yeah.
some of the systems that you're thinking about? And as a product that's probably evolved over time, you
Mm-hmm.
also don't want to overpromise something,
Right.
right? And because this has actually happened in development, where I used to work in themed entertainment, working for Disney, where
Mhm.
we kind of promised something like a feature that ended up not being necessary and
Mhm.
just a huge waste of time.
Mhm.
Right? And you want to avoid that, right? Because time equals money in their company and blah
Mhm.
blah blah. But in the end, I think it was really great to hear him say like we're working on it and acknowledging that we've
Yeah.
heard all of this, and that he is also poking the person in charge, right? Doesn't want
Yeah.
to speak for him. It's all respectful, but I really liked hearing that, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to speak on it just a little bit extra because it's something
Mhm.
that I've been personally frustrated about um, recently
Yeah.
with some other communities that I'm a part of. And again, like you said, they have a point. It's just I hope they're thinking about the fact that these are smart people here, and I think it's safe to assume that
Right.
your concerns have probably been thought of.
Yeah.
And if not, then that's where I think the feedback is appropriate. Feedback's always appropriate, but I don't think it's anything to get your like Jimmy's rustled over.
Yeah. So I think another part of it is it's extrapolation on the part of the community that I think is probably just based on, and I'm saying ignorance not in like a derogatory way, but like ignorance as in just not having information or not understanding or knowing about a certain thing. It's like, okay, League of Legends has a spectator client. Okay. TFT is in the league client, therefore TFT should have spectator client. That is the at least logical progression that people are going through, and it's I think just a lack of understanding of how that works. I don't know how it works, but I'm instead of being like, oh well, why the heck isn't this on? I'm saying, oh, there's probably I guess maybe I'm just putting too much. I'm giving too much benefit of the doubt to the developers and be like, oh, the reason
Because
that it's not there
I think there
is
is a
there is
time
some
limit
reason.
to this argument,
Sure,
right? Like
sure,
if it's been like 6 months and they're like it's
go,
technically still after galaxies,
yeah,
right? Then we can be a little pissed off, right?
sure,
Especially if they make it to their world event without a spectator mode. So
yeah,
like that's not going to happen, right? But I'm just saying that's where I'm going to start getting upset. As of right now, I'm going to hold judgment until I see spectator mode,
right,
right? And see what that's like, and then give feedback as to what it needs, what kind of stats
right.
are necessary, and contributing in that way. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think contributing anger, I think there are times where it is appropriate.
Well, contributing feedback, I think, and anger if it
Yeah,
is warranted, but I
if
don't.
it's warranted.
Yeah, because like that is the other side of it is like, oh well, spectator mode hasn't come out in 8 months or whatever. It's like, well, we actually wanted it. I think what that communicates is that it's one of two things. Either it for whatever reason is that complicated and technical of a implementation that it just couldn't be done, which I think is unlikely. Or the other thing that it says is that they, and by they I mean Riot and the team, misunderstood how much we actually value it, and they improperly weighted how important that feature is.
Hmm.
So the feedback of the community is absolutely essential. And I don't think I know myself and neither you, Boop, are saying, oh, well, don't give Riot your feedback. It's
Yes.
don't complain incessantly and
Don't give
toxically.
uninformed feedback, I think
Right.
is a
Think
really
about it
good
for a
way
think
of
about
saying
it
it.
from the
Yeah.
other perspective for a second. Um, that's all that we ask. I mean, and at the end of the day, I don't really care. Like, I don't work for Riot. You can complain to Riot all you want. I don't think it's going to help, but that's my
Blev, you don't know the equation of complaining equals faster? I
and
know my husband
thus
loves it.
and thus a Karen was born. Uh,
Did you hear that?
did you hear it?
That that little complaint in the
That
wind?
was the sound. Wait, manager.
Manager.
I'd like to speak to your
Manager.
manager.
What?
Joke's on you. We
I
don't
am the
work in the same
manager.
building anymore because of COVID-19. And I brought it way back down, but
Way
we can
back.
bring it way back up by talking about some positives.
Yeah. And I think one, just to kind of put a pin in it, he was super cool. Excited to have him on the show again
Mhm.
whenever we're all ready to
Yep.
get together for another podcast date.
Mhm.
But everything, man, I just love it when people can speak like the way he speaks, if that makes sense, like with passion and with intent
Yes.
and with care, right? Like
I mean,
and
who
thought.
else whiteboarded the answer to what's the tastiest little legend? I mean,
Seasonings? Question mark. That
that
ripped
is
me apart on the inside. I was literally laughing.
that blows it out of the water because it's like
Yeah.
the little legend. I guess the little legend type is only one part of the equation. Do you want pork, chicken, water, cat? The second layer is the seasoning.
It is. We've not. He unleashed a whole new meta.
Wow.
of-
A
of-
brand new
of
meta
TFT.
of eating little legends. I just hope
Yeah.
I just want a nod in one either in one of just something. I mean, I feel like the Tutti Frutti squink and the donut squink is that's got to be a nod to eating little legends, right? It's got to be.
It's
Bemmy,
gotta
I'll
be.
give you one guess as to which one of the little legends is water, and I'll give you a hint. It's the base one called River Sprite.
I actually use it like ironically sometimes, like, oh, I've never played the game, and it's like, oh wow, everyone else has this. Never mind.
You got to use
It's
the
like
Galaxies one.
why do you like why do people come up with those narratives in their
Attack
heads,
me,
right?
bud. I'm
Like,
sorry, Bemmy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to attack. I mean, I kind of did, but I didn't mean it to be as effective as of an attack.
it's critical hit.
Critical failure on my part.
But yeah, like I loved it.
Mhm.
But something else I love, like you said, is our boy Sphinx, who I
Yes.
believe is my favorite.
Sphinxy boy. Yes, Sphinx is your favorite. Did you make the?
Oh no, not yet. I don't know actually how. Okay, I'll
I can
do
do
it
it.
right after the pod. Okay.
I'll do
Can you make it?
What color?
Right. You know it's pink.
Okay. Well, Sphinx is Boob's favorite.
Yeah. And the reason why
Yes.
is because he finished the highest of the podcast participants at the Cruise Invitational Dose. Gangly, I think, was pretty strong in that tournament. He had he had a fine performance on Space Jam, but unfortunately, second is still not my favorite. As Sphinx is also my favorite because this is so cool, and we're gonna be like little Papa Bears to Sphinx real quick. Because he was one of the first participants in game night, one of the first people in the Discord, and it's like so cool to see this player who I think our community and I know we have thought has been one of the best TFT players, period.
Yeah.
Like full stop. And unfortunately, just didn't have that streamer following, I think, to get initially noticed. But
he's
now
getting
that
there.
He's getting there.
He hit 50 subs today.
Yeah, that's good stuff,
That's
right? And one good cool thing about TFT, I remember being like, well, what are we going to do with these people who might leave in Legends of Runeterra? Are we going to have TFT personalities? And I think Sphinx is actually becoming one of those kind of like native TFT personalities.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the community is in terms of rating, in terms of like sharing links, the TFT community loves helping other TFT streamers. And I'm really, really happy to see a lot of people in the community, just not just Sphinx, but even on some other games now, right? That maybe joined our community as TFT and then are making some content for other games like Valorant or Legends of Runeterra, right? Like it's just so cool to see these people grow in their careers, and I'm really excited to see what Sphinx is going to be able to do in the new Giant Slayer series.
Yes,
it's going to be amazing.
Sphinx did qualify for GSS 2. Which is really awesome, and it was really cool. Giant Slayer did, let the GSS 1 was invitational based, which I think was cool. Was a great way to do it. This upcoming season, it was qualifier based, so a bunch of players got to play, and in EU and NA, the top 8 from both qualified. So we had on the EU side, we had Sunny Lu, Kravar, Dark Hydra, Higa, Gunmay, Disick, Lev D, and Unid. And on the NA side, we had Aegon, NA, Sphinx coming in at number 3, Nature's BF, Crowan, Cutting Is Hard, Kayun, and Tien, rounding out the last 8.
Sphinx beating the legs of Grand Vice, K3 Soju, Jinxed.
Yeah.
It's your boy BC
Yeah.
and
Becca. Yeah.
and
I mean,
Becca. So and finishing ahead of Natures and Crowan and Kiyun.
yeah.
Like these are all TFT names, and Sphinx
Yep.
plays against these guys and gals all the time. And
Yep.
I'm so excited to see him finally get the recognition he deserves, getting casted by the likes of Doa and Frodan is who did it last season.
Yeah.
Maybe Excoundrel moving forward because he's doing some of that stuff too. I'm so excited for all of these people. Same thing with guys like Natures,
Yeah.
who are like the Lobby 2, not just like the Fight Night Rising people,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That are getting their chance, and I hope they take it. I will never forget Natures getting 2 Gangplanks at I think was it round 6 or round 4 or something like that.
Wow.
It was something crazy like that. He got Candyland super early. Guy has some luck.
Natures has been around for a while too. He's another like TFT
Yeah.
person. I remember he was one of the ones. He might not have been the first, but he was definitely one of the ones that had one of the more popular Kassassin guides on Reddit, where he was literally like, he was one of the ones that went like, okay, on round 3-1, do this. On round 3-2, do this. Between 3-3 and 3-7, you're doing that, like literally step by step how to win with Kassassin.
Oh, that was his.
That was his guide.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yep.
That's right. All these people who about, right?
They've been
You
putting
their
in the
names as
time.
authors,
Yeah.
right? Like they've been here the whole time, right? Like same
Yep.
thing in Overwatch, same thing in other places, right?
Yeah.
It's like a lot of these contenders / tier 2 players, right, have been here as long, if not longer, than some of the people who
Yeah.
have been able to skip some steps.
Rolf
right?
is in Overwatch League now.
Finally,
He started playing Overwatch in 1986.
but they've been here the whole time, and it's so great to see their hard work. People who work as hard as Sphinx and all
Yeah.
these other guys and gals have their stuff pay off. It's unfortunate that we do have to lose some players. Like Becca is probably my favorite TFT streamer, and I'd love to see her compete a little bit more. But
Yeah.
at least she's got her stream. It's
Yeah.
it's so and you get the whole thing now. You get the competitive side, you got the streamer side, you got the whole
Yeah.
sandwich.
And I think another thing that was touched upon in the interview that is not really thought about from the community standpoint, because it's like that next level, and as a fan you don't care, you just want the best thing, and I don't care how it's done. Don't show me how the sausage is made, just make me my sandwich, please. The balance between streamers and pro players, because those two there is definitely overlap for sure. Soju is one of the bigger TFT streamers, but not the biggest. There is some overlap, but not always. Like, just because you are a top player does not mean you're a top streamer. And also, like, it's not like it says in TFT. It's like, oh, in order to be world champion, you have to be a streamer. Like, you need to have a Twitch following to be a world champion. It's like, nope, that specifically isn't there. And especially when you're talking about when you start bringing up the World Series of Poker and those other sorts of events, even like Magic the Gathering Grand Prix and whatnot, it's like none of that matters. Like, you just need, like, those events, if you're good and you win, you win. It doesn't matter how big your stream was. It doesn't matter how big your following is. And maybe this propels you into something, but like, it doesn't have to.
One of the coolest things about the one time DreamHack came to Denver was the Hearthstone tournament that they ran was an open tournament, and my buddy Bo, who, if members is still in the chat, is one of my casting friends in Hearthstone. Not just casting friends, best friend in real life, as well. Went like 6 or 7-0 to start the day off, and he had never been in a major tournament that way.
Yeah.
Like, how someone who just a regular Joe Schmo, right, go in. It doesn't matter what rank you are, right? Because I remember making semis as a rank 19 Hearthstone player.
Yeah.
It's so funny because like I became rank 5 like a month later, but my greatest success was at rank 19. I wonder what that tells me. But yeah, like, that's the coolest thing. And for him to say like thousands of people can compete, one of the best things about Open Division and Overwatch way earlier on was like hearing, wow, 1,100 teams signed up.
Yep.
Right. And while it's a brutal brutal kind of tournament, an open division tournament,
Oh god.
right?
Those, I mean,
We
just
wouldn't have gotten our first Twitch Rivals winner without an open tournament.
right.
We wouldn't have gotten our first
True.
female Hearthstone winner at BlizzCon without an open tournament, right? People who might have not ever gotten that kind of chance are now able to be put on the same
Yeah.
playing field. And I think it also really goes to show how good some of like the greatest game players there are, whether it be an MTG or Hearthstone, and now
Yeah.
TFT, where guys like Purple, guys
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
Orange and Hearthstone that are consistently an Amnesiac before he kind of fell apart. Consistently make it to the end of these tournaments, even in these open style tournaments. Like, it goes to show that it's a pretty balanced method, and there's no greater story than someone coming out of nowhere and taking the victory. And of course, maybe sanctity of the game, blah blah blah. But in my mind, that's a better storyline than the same person winning every single time, right? Because I love
Yeah.
basketball, and I have a weird it's not weird. I actually really, really enjoy watching women's basketball. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I throw out a lot of stats about it.
We
But
talk about
you
the UConn women's basketball team a lot, yeah.
yeah, and I'm going to bring them up again because when a team wins 88 times in a
Yeah.
row, right, and you just know UConn or Tennessee are going to win the NCAA Women's Championship for that time, it becomes less fun. So
Yeah.
it becomes more of, are you going to watch for them to lose, or are you watching for another reason, right?
Right.
And I think when it comes to open tournaments and open divisions, it's just so fun to see these nobodies become somebodies all of a sudden, win one tournament, win 200K, never do it again, right? But they still become a part of that game's history, and that's so damn cool.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, chip in a chair slogan, it resonates for a reason, right? Like, anyone can win this. I mean, that's part of the fun of it. It's not chess. You're not going to beat Magnus Carlsen. I'm sorry, average person listening to this show, you're not going to beat them. It's like turns out that like all these like chess grandmasters listen to the show and like, I've beaten Carlsen 58 times. I doubt it, but like, that's sort of the beauty of a game like poker, a game like TFT, a game even like Magic, where like there are varying levels of like skill expression in those games for sure. And like, yes, in the long run, we see the top players coming out ahead, winning more events, being, net positive in terms of winnings and whatnot. But in any given event, like, you just need to chip in a chair. And that's really exciting. The other side of it is like, for the World Series of Poker now, it's established, and like, especially in like, 2003, I think it was 2003 was the year Moneymaker won. No one knew who Moneymaker was, but people knew what the World Series of Poker was. And this was the first year it was like on ESPN and really pushed in the way it was. And then that sort of grew the sport and propelled the sport into the mainstream much more. You need the thing is, like, the World Series of Poker didn't start in 2003. World Series of Poker was going on in like the 50s or like,
yeah, the golden nugget.
Yeah, at least like dozens or it was going on for decades before that. I don't know exactly when it started, but it was definitely decades. So like, no one going into 2003, no one cared about Chris Moneymaker, but people cared about the World Series of Poker. You need to build out that.
It was Binion's Horseshoe Casino.
Yeah,
it started in 1970.
Okay, so I was off by 20 years, but I stayed at Binion's the one time I went to no, I didn't. I stayed by Binion's. That's Old Vegas. I definitely recommend you go to Old Vegas instead of staying on the Strip, by the way. It's much cheaper. But I forget, what is that street called? I forget. It doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. Fremont Street, yes. It's a fun touristy place. You need, from obviously from Riot's perspective and from the esport in general's perspective, you need to build up the allure of that and the popularity and the watchability and whatnot of the sport before you go in to the like watchability of the top player. Like, no one, like, Does anyone know who the Michael Jordan of Highlight is right now? I don't.
Whoa, deep cut, sixth grade gym sport right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
By the way, I have seen like professional highlight players. It's nuts.
Oh, I believe it.
Like it's like kind of like handball, right? Where the version you play at school is
Mhm.
not as brutal as the
Oh,
one
yeah.
they play
Sure.
competitively. Goodness gracious. Anyway, go on.
So the point I'm making is like, and you bringing that up, it actually solidifies the point. Like, if you're watching, like if you were at a professional highlight event, I'm assuming that those exist. I don't actually know in probably non-US countries, maybe a little bit in the US. If you go to a professional highlight event and you're super into highlight and like you have a podcast about highlight, you're covering it, you're watching it, you love it, like yes, in your community that is going to be huge. And like, you know who that is. You know who that Michael Jordan is of highlight. But no one, you need to build out the sport before you're like pushing the top players necessarily, because like in the case of esports and in the case of TFT, like yeah, you should be, I want to see the Scaras, the Beccas, the Twitch rivals invitees. I want to see them in events. Now, they should not get invites to the World Championships, and as we talked about with Magus before, that's not what is happening. This event is to crown the best player, but these promotional events, these Twitch rivals events, these new set invitational events, I really think, and this happened with other happens with other games too. People really need to see those events for what they are. They are not we're crowning the best player here, and we invited the 16 best players. We invited the 16 biggest streamers to promote the game. It's a marketing event. It is not it is esports in the sense that it's competition and it's gaming. It is not esports in the sense that it is crowning the best player. It's more of an all-star game than it is than not even an all-star game, like an all-star like side event promotional thing than it is
it's more like
event.
the home run derby
than
the actual all-star game.
Right.
And that's okay. Like that's the
Absolutely.
thing. A question that I didn't get to that I think is okay for what we were talking about are these going to be run congruently with other events, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to lump Legends of Runeterra, TFT, and what the Future Fighting game or something into like the BlizzCon like experience, right? Me being someone who loves going to conventions and I love going to BlizzCon, I would hope so, right? If you were to go to RiotCon and like the World Championship,
don't even joke about that, because I'm just so sad that it doesn't exist.
Right? But like with all these new things, it can be run very similarly to BlizzCon, right? And I would love that, but the reason I ask is, I kind of asked it with the poker question, and it's like, you know what? You guys just kind of do what you want. Right? Like we're going to have our events the way that we're going to do it our way, but I think they're open to seeing what other people are doing in terms of point systems, in terms of standings, and not just that, but also in terms of casting. There are mechanics in terms of esports, whether it comes to casting and participation and audience participation, that are there that you need to kind of abide by. But with TFT, we're still learning, right? We're still learning on what is the best way to watch TFT. Is it with your streamer? I was reading a Reddit thread about the Last Giant Slayer stuff, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were watching certain streamers. There really wasn't any comment on the mainstream, right? It was just on individual people. So that that got me to thinking about what this means for the competitive environment, right? We don't know, right? Do people even want to listen to the casters? I would hope so. I would love to be a caster.
Well, for what it's worth, there were a lot of people in the main cast, because that's where I was hanging out. It was like 700-800 people at least.
But that expands to, well, does a TriCast work? Right? Like, does something where you mix like 6 invitational or like 4 invites with streamers and well-known people versus 4 ladder players, right? Like there's really cool things that you can mix and match when it comes to how this looks, but no one has yet decided exactly what this is. And while I think some TOs would love some guidance on how to best run and scale up these events, I think you can take some liberties with how you
Oh yeah.
specifically run
Hmm.
your event on what that looks like based off of what you said, Blev. It's okay to just run the home run derby, or it's okay to do
Yeah.
the dodgeball tournament, right, for your family and friends.
Yes.
Not every single tournament has to be high stakes and cast it super straight and
Right.
blah blah blah, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that it not only does it not have to be, it is to the detriment of the esport in general if you over index for it too early. Timing is
Mhm.
everything in things like this. Imagine and not to speak poorly of any of the top players and their presence in the community, because I think that they're all great. If the first I think we've had three main Twitch Rivals events, one of which was at TwitchCon. If those Twitch Rivals events, instead of it being Twitch streamers, big Twitch streamers and whatnot, and instead it was just we're taking the top 16 players on ladder, those events would have sucked in terms of like any metric. They would have been the most competitive event at the time. But like thinking about it, set one with like where no one knows anyone, no one knows anything. Some players are probably massively better than others because they just like people. Like, that would have been no one would have watched that event. Not a single
Well,
person would have watched that event.
as someone who's been in marketing too, one of my biggest fears is, like, say I was unavailable for like a press release or something,
Mhm.
and I had to send in like the intern, and
Right.
I'm like, I don't know if he can interview, right? Like,
Right.
imagine a group of 16 people where you're like
Right.
trying to get this game out, right? And you're trying to market this to the best of your ability. You get these interviews, and they're like, I like it. We played good,
Right.
right? Which has its place in esports, because I find all of those kinds of interviews fascinating and amazing.
Now, a lot of that
Um,
is on how the interviewer can handle it, but
yeah, but I'm gonna feel safer in terms of a marketing advantage, in terms
right.
of a just like getting eyes on this type of thing, right? It's kind of the
Right.
same thing as like my very shiny pitch deck I would do on a lot of my like business dev
Hmm.
presentations, right? Like, look at all these wonderful things and blah blah
Right.
blah, right? And we can try all this, and we'll work through it as we go on.
Right.
But I think that's what a lot of these function. And just because it's done one way doesn't mean it's going to be done that way
Yeah.
again. And that was another really big thing that Whalen talked about, was we lumped it in with the All-Star game, which I actually thought was a good idea. But apparently there were a lot of
Well,
people who didn't. And
surprise,
then he was
league
like,
people hate everything.
um, including themselves a lot of the time. Because I know that's true for me. But no, like, to kind of go back to it, it's like he said, well, we're going to try something different.
Yeah.
Right. And to be flexible like that, with a new genre where they're pretty much going to determine what an auto battler esport
Right.
looks like.
Hmm.
Valve could, right? Maybe Auto Chess could, but it's gonna be Riot, right? Riot is setting the stage here, and
Yeah.
they need to do it right, because they know the second that they start something, right? Just like, Paladins to Overwatch, just like, a lot of these other things coming out right after these popular things, they're going to have to maintain that
Right.
position after everyone else joins them. And they
Right.
want to set themselves up and set that foundation.
Hmm.
That was music to my ears. It's a lot of people speaking. A lot of people forget about building that foundation. They're just so worried about what the top of that pyramid is going to look like.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that was a nice little post interview conversation there, Boop. I thought we got some nice insights out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just so crazy that that was like, what, 20 minutes of questioning with Whalen. We got
Yeah,
almost,
almost
the
40
same
minutes.
amount. Yeah, 40 minutes of reaction.
Yeah.
And I just love that the devs on TFT, at least the ones that I have interacted with, just love the game too, right? It's so hard to kind of like eat where you what you don't want to shit where you eat. Is that what it
Right.
is?
Yeah.
Where it's like, say you work at the Olive Garden, and before you worked at the Olive Garden, you loved the Olive Garden, right? And then after like a month of the Olive Garden, you hate the Olive Garden now.
Right. Yep.
Right? Like I think in gaming it can be really similar. I think some of the burnout that we've seen in Overwatch has been very similar,
Yep.
right? And I don't think that's the case here in TFT. I think the people who are professionally playing it really love and enjoy the game, are really passionate about it, and aren't getting burnout quite yet. Set 2 was kind of hard in terms of just like
Mhm.
opportunities not being there. But now that we're here at Galaxies, I don't really see a lot of the same. I could be wrong. But even
Yeah.
like the discussions on the subreddit are super interesting to me,
Mhm.
right? Like one of the questions is a diverse meta automatically equal a fun meta? And I was like, wait a second. I have an opinion on that, but I've never thought about it. And
Yeah.
those are the types of things being asked on the subreddit, not
Mhm.
like the devs are dumb.
Yeah.
We got to get more people out there. Blah blah blah.
Well, some people
You know?
are certainly like that, but not
Yeah, I
not
think
the
there's
overwhelming
I think there's
opinion.
less of them, and
Yeah.
Whalen being like, "Oh, I play during my exercise," right? Uh, these guys play the game. They
Yeah.
know what's frustrating about it. They know what the
Yep.
people want,
hmm
and that is exactly what's gonna solidify my faith in that entire team more so than it already has been.
Yeah.
Because even when the patches have been bad, right? I understand the intention behind them, and I
hmm
think that's the most important part.
I mean, we go over literally every single patch note that comes out on the show, and I don't recall a single time where we were like, "This seems really bad." The only time that we even, I think, questioned it was like, "They're buffing Gnar again." It's interesting.
We were right, by the
We're
way,
100%
the third
right about
time.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But oh man, that reminds me of Osto. I missed Osto. Osto, if you're out there somewhere,
What,
buddy.
yeah, what happened? What
He
happened?
went.
To
He just played different games.
yeah.
Come back to us, Osto. We miss you, buddy. A game night OG. But I think we'll call it there, guys. I hope everyone enjoyed the interview. I know we sure did. But let us know in the comments section and in Discord what you thought. Again, discord.me/Little Legends Podcast. That is the place to be. You get to know about us. You also get to play game night on Fridays. We're going to be doing that this Friday as well. But, Boop, any last minute stuff before we get going here?
You can. I am going to be announcing some news.
Ooh.
Come June.
Ooh.
But it's something that I'm going to be very excited about.
Ooh.
We just got to finish all the right stuff, and so
Cross
look out
the
for that
T's and dot the I's.
announcement. Yeah, or I say like I started saying heart the eyes.
No.
I literally got slapped by one of my friends the
Eh,
other when
If I
could
were
be
in the
slapped
same
by
time
friends.
zone.
Yeah, cross your T's, heart your eyes. Oh
Nope.
man, don't you hate it?
I sure do.
Yeah. And so I'm really excited about that. So you're going to be, and it is TFT related. So that's really,
Ooh.
really, really exciting. And then there's a second actually announcement that's also TFT related that we get to do soon once we get the okay.
I wonder what that
you're
is.
going to be seeing a lot more Boop and a lot more Blev and maybe a lot more both of us together.
Ooh.
You can also find me at Booposaurus Rex on Twitter.
Yeah.
But you can only follow me if you unfollow Podcast Dude first.
Go for it. I don't care about my Twitter. But if you care about my Twitter, follow me at @the_Blevins. But you should just go to the Discord. That's where all of our stuff is. Discord.me/Little Legends Podcast. It's the place to be. But thank you everyone for watching. Again, huge shout outs to Riot and to Whalen for coming on the show and talking to us for a little bit. Really do appreciate it. But that's going to be it for Boop. I am Blevins, and we'll be back next week to talk about some more TFT. See ya!